Hello YouTube, this is Richard, founder of ShortTermRentalSecrets.com and Airbnb Superhost. On today's episode, we're going to answer a subscriber's question, which is how do you manage listings remotely, i.e. in places that you don't live day to day? So in my personal experience, there's three different business models that all work. One's not better than the other, they just have different pros and cons and price points, and the question is how much involvement do you want? And so we'll get into that in a second. But let's go ahead and label what they are. So the first one that you could work with is what's called a full-scale property service team. This is likely a corporation. It might be called Acme Property Managers, and they're in and around the community where your home is, and they likely manage 20, 30, 50, 60 different properties, and you're just one of their portfolio of properties that they manage from A to Z. The second one is a much smaller scale, much more entrepreneurial. It might be an individual or a couple like Billy and Monica. They may not even be incorporated, but they make all of their income from managing the vacation properties or the remote properties in your area. And instead of having 40, 50, or 60 under their belts, they really can't handle more than, say, 5 or 6. And so that's a second alternative. And then the third alternative is to not have property managers at all, but go out and assemble your own cherry-picked team of people that do things like cleaning, and when there's a plumbing issue, a plumber. And so you basically oversee it. You are the property manager, and you just have hands and feet on the ground. So the obvious question is, what are the pros and cons for each one? Well, let's start with number one, the property manager. Likely the most turnkey solution, the most scalable, the most automated, requires the least amount of time and energy from you, but it comes at a price. Likely they're going to charge the most, maybe as much as 20 or more % of your rental income to handle it. And I also think that the quality of service can be variable. Since you don't have a consistent team always working on your property, they have different employees coming and going and so on. Sometimes I have found that there's a variability in the quality of attention that my property received. The second business model, the entrepreneurial individual or the couple, is a solution that I tend to look for, but the pro is that you really get personal experience. They get to know your home, they get to know the area, they're dependent on you for income, so like they actually care about the relationship, and therefore they really try and make it work, for both you and them and the guests. So that's a really good solution. It comes at a lower price point typically than a full service one because they don't have the same overhead, but it is still relatively expensive. Now the con is they can be hard to find, and you are dependent on an individual or a couple, and things happen to an individual or a couple, like they get sick or they take vacation or they move out of town, or God forbid somebody passes away, and now your business is in jeopardy. The third option, where you assemble your own go-to team of people, the pro is the cost is the lowest and the quality can often be the highest. Because you're actually involved, the attention to detail and the quality control is the highest. The con is it's hard to find these people. There may be turnover, so you may be looking for them, repeatedly or time and time again. And thirdly, if you're new to the area entirely, like for instance, I bought a home down south, I'd never really been there. I don't know who the good plumbers are. I don't know who the good HVAC people are. I had to develop that network over time. And that can take some time and effort. And if you're not prepared to invest that, that's a negative. So let's turn to how do you actually find these people and how do you differentiate, between and amongst them. So the first one is relatively easy. On the property management side, just Google, look at Yelp reviews. The one thing that I would recommend, and I think people just don't do enough of, is before you hire them, ask for a list of references and then actually call them and ask some questions. How long have you used them? How many times have they done turnover? Did they ever miss a same-day turnover? Have you noticed any deterioration in your reviews? Is like the cleanliness gone down? How attentive are they? Just ask questions that would help you make a decision between hiring Acme Property Management and Beta Property Management. So the second group, the individual or the couple, the entrepreneurs that handle property management, they're a little bit more challenging to find, and really you have to do a little bit of legwork. And that includes going into the local real estate offices and asking them if they know anybody. Oftentimes they do, right? It's like my sister does this on the side, or I know this homeowner and they seem to have a caretaker. That might be what they call them, a caretaker that takes care of their property they're really happy with. And again, you're going to need several different names and numbers, and you're going to have to question them. But speak to everybody. When you go down to this property, Ask your contractor, ask your electrician, ask the waitress, ask whomever. You want to assemble as many opportunities and names and then speak to them and see which one is the right fit, because that fit is really important. They're all going to do good work, but who do you get along with working well when it's midnight on a Friday and there's an ice storm and you need help? The cleaning team is an interesting one because there's a couple of different things you can do. You can literally do a Google search and then just look at reviews on Yelp and so on. And here you might find entrepreneurial people that are advertising or have their own website, and you want to try and strike a business relationship, right? Beyond transactional. You don't want to be just somebody who's called them and hired them once. You want to explain to them, I bought this property, I have a 30-year mortgage, I'm going to own this thing outright, I'm going to be here for 30 years, and what I really want is somebody on the ground who's responsive to me and doing the cleaning to my level. I'd like to try you out, I want to see how clean it is. And so like that's one option, is where you're looking for somebody and you're partnering with them. And then of course, the other alternative is to do, and I recommend you do them both, a ton of networking and find out who's good in the neighborhood. Heck, find other hosts in your neighborhood and ring their bell and knock on their door and say, who does your cleaning and are you happy with them? So this requires a little bit more legwork, but if you find a good team, you're going to be really happy. So just to give you a very broad sense of what you might expect to pay for these different levels of services, and again, there's different geographies and different vacation versus urban, but let me just try and paint a broad stroke. That full service property management team is likely going to be somewhere 20% or north of your entire rent roll. Now, that might be an obstacle and make it so it's not even possible. If you're trying to pay your mortgages and expenses and so on, you have to take a look at your net number and make sure that after you pay them their fee, their cut, that you have enough money left over. And you may not, so like don't consider that. That second group, which is more entrepreneurial, they do similar services, that's going to come at a discount because they don't have all the same overhead and office staff and people answering the phone. And so instead of paying 20%, you should look to pay 15% or ideally 10%, maybe even less. It really depends. But it should be at a discount to that first group where it's a property management. And then the third one, which is really just a cleaning team, if you will, there I recommend that you strike a flat rate. So for every turnover, you pay a certain amount. And it should be based on how many hours you think they need to spend there and what the local wage is. But just to give you an example, it might be $15 to $20 per hour. And for a modest size home, it might be a 4-hour or a 6-hour turnaround. And so maybe it's $100, $150, $200. And if you watch my Should I Charge a Cleaning Fee video, you'll see that I suggest charging even a premium of that, so you make a little bit of money on the cleaning fee. So currently I use a mix of the second option and the third option. I don't use any full-scale property managers. I have really solid people in place both at that second option and the third, and it works really well for me. The one tip that I would share with everybody is no matter where you go, whether it's the first, second, or third, you want to be really involved, you want to be really knowledgeable, you want to be really clear and train these people to work with you for your standards, right? Just because they're professional cleaners or professional property managers doesn't mean that they know the way that you want your home cleaned or the way that you expect it to be set for guests. And so be really thorough and be really detailed and have them come clean when you're on location. As you start to build the trust in your team, you can spend less and less time and rely on them more and more, knowing that they're fully trained and capable and executing at your standards. To the subscriber, thanks so much for asking the question. I'm sure it's a question that's on many people's mind and I just sort of take it for granted, so I really appreciate you reaching out. If anybody has any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments section. Like the video, please, I'd really appreciate that. And like I said, we have a lot more content coming out, including how to automate all of this. And to stay in contact, go ahead and subscribe now. Please go ahead and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We have content coming out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and the primary goal is to put more money in your pocket. Until then, happy hosting.